In this video, I'll show you how quickly you can calculate your company's carbon footprint using the CarbonSWOT tool. We want to bring you as much value as possible, and for this reason, we need to know some details about your business. We ask you to fill out some basic data to calculate your greenhouse gas emissions. You can start with the first field in our list, company name. Here, you will need to enter the full legal name of the company that you're planning to do the calculations for. Besides, you can add the information on the number of employees working for your company in the next field, number of employees. However, this field is not mandatory, so you can simply skip it if you would like to. Moving on to your country field, you just need to select yours from the list on the right by either scrolling it down or by entering the country's name in the search field. The same principle applies for your industries field, where you also need to choose your industry and sub-industry from the right menu. An industry indicates a general business domain of your company, while a sub-industry is some particular area within it. Just choose the industry and the sub-industry from the list and press Done. You can also add more industries and sub-industries in case your company operates in different domains. Next step is choosing the reporting year by selecting it from the list of the available ones. Let's take 2022. The last step is the annual revenue of your company, which is the required input for the benchmark analysis part of the final report. It will allow you to compare your company's emissions to those of the businesses of roughly the same size in your sub-industry. However, if you don't know one, you can skip this step. Now, you can press the Next Stage button, which became active, and start filling out the fields for Scope 1. To calculate Scope 1 emissions, you need to share the data on the amount of combustion fuels burned by your company. For example, fuel volumes for the vehicles owned or controlled by you. There are separate fields for each of the most common fuel types. If you have any doubts on which one you are burning, you can check their definitions using the question marks on the left. We have prepared a thorough description for each fuel type listed, so that you could always pick the correct one. We encourage you to add all the fuels you burn, even if there is only a small amount consumed. This will make your report more precise and detailed. If you have neither vehicles nor machinery or furnaces, you can leave zeros and proceed to the next screen. But before doing that, please browse through your company's books to ensure that you indeed do not consume anything from the list. For example, even if you do not directly own a vehicle, but you fuel it, you still need to enter this data to get the most precise figures for your Scope 1 emissions. On the next step, please provide the information on how much electricity, heating, and steam you used. Bear in mind that you can split your bill if there is already some share of green energy in your company. Check your electricity and heating bills and enter the annual sum to the CarbonSWOT calculator. In case you have no steam consumption, or you do not purchase heating but have everything installed in-house, leave zeros in these fields and click Scope 3. Now you can already get a report on your direct greenhouse gases emissions, namely Scopes 1 and 2. But you can continue further and also perform calculations for your company's indirect upstream emissions. Such a report will be much more detailed, precise, and reliable, showing you the full emissions overview from all company operations, cradle to gate. Moving forward, we have a detailed Scope 3 upstream emissions calculator. Scope 3 emissions occur from purchased goods and services, capital goods, fuel and energy, transportation and distribution, waste generated in operation, business travel, employee commute, and leased assets. You can choose only those sections that are relevant to your company. None of them is mandatory, but the majority is essential for any business activity. For example, purchased parts and services are there for every company and usually have a high effect on the overall company's footprint. For that reason, we recommend filling all of these fields, as Scope 3 upstream could be several times higher than your company's direct GHG emissions. For the first section, choose your clusters of goods and services, sub-industry, and country, and then enter the amount your company spent on goods, services, and raw materials. Let's fill in the first cluster. It will be mining, with coal as a sub-industry, and all happening in South Africa. Now, let's enter the amount our exemplary company spent on this. You can add as many clusters as you need by clicking the Add Group button and repeating the same procedure, choosing a cluster, a sub-industry, and a location, and inputting the second amount. Let's also fill in the third cluster. This time for manufacturing, copper, and again South Africa. And input the third amount. Then we move on to the next section. Here, please input your capital goods purchasing activity in the CarbonSWOT tool. There is no need to include lots of details. Just specify what clusters of goods and services you purchase. Choose a cluster, we'll go with motor vehicles, a country, ours is South Africa, and enter the expenditures on this type of capital goods during a reporting period. You can also add as many groups as you need here. Let's choose a second cluster, electrical machinery, location. We will place all of this in South Africa, but if you have different assets in different regions, you can choose them and fill in its expenditures. Let's also specify spending for measuring equipment. And for our exemplary company's real estate in the area. Emissions from furnishing can amount to some significant numbers, so it's definitely worth specifying this cluster. Now, when you're all done, you can proceed to the next section. Section 3.3 is calculated automatically based on your input in scopes 1 and 2, so you just click through it and move on to the next one. Transportation and distribution is also a very important section that, depending on the company's business activities, can be a large source of CO2 emissions. Here, you need to input your company's spend on different transportation or logistics types. Or, if you know the detailed distance covered by each of them, you can perform a more precise calculation based on it. In this mode, you need to choose a means of transport and specify its traveled distance and weight. You can also choose multiple means by clicking the same Add Group button below. Please bear in mind that CarbonSWOT has a separate logistics CO2 equivalent calculator on a paid plan, where you can work out GHG emissions of each and every logistics route that you currently have or plan, and compare these figures to determine the least polluting one. Once you're finished, you can transition to the next stage. Our demo company doesn't lease any assets, so we click No and can now move on to the report. In case you have no data to fill for any or all scopes, you can choose an option to make calculations based on your annual turnover instead, by pressing the button I don't know. But we recommend you to avoid using this method, as it is far less precise than calculation per each scope method. Finally, we've got a report that you can share with government regulators, your counterparts, and the public. You can see a SWOT analysis of your calculation prepared by our AI, with the recommendations on improving your carbon neutrality and making the world greener. Making the report every year or quarter will allow you to track your progress on your emissions reduction journey. Save and update all your reports in your profile.